Not only has Donald Trump got me thinking about getting a comb over, but he's also got me thinking about what a naturalized citizen is. Rob Natelson is the constitutional scholar at the Independence Institute. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here, John.
All right. This amendment, the 14th Amendment, this is a long, weird amendment, but I only wanted to ask you about the first part, and I got my cheat sheet right here. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. The term for this in the current campaign is anchor babies. So it's a simple question. If illegals come to the United States, give birth, does that baby born, is that an American citizen? It seems like a pretty simple question. It's not that simple.
And there's a simple answer, John. I don't know, and neither does anybody else.
But doesn't it just say right there, if you're born here, you're an American?
Well, it says if you're born and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. The people who drafted the 14th Amendment didn't always do a good job. And one of the things they tended to do is use phrases without real clear content. And that's the case here. Nobody is absolutely sure whether a child born in this country of a person who's illegally in this country is born subject to the jurisdiction or not. That's subject of very great debate right now.
All right, let's talk about the 14th Amendment. This is a powerful amendment. It does all sorts of different things. Why was it cobbled together in this way? What was the purpose of it?
Okay.
Why was there the need?
Yeah, there were several different purposes. One was very legitimate. There was a fear that the southern states, once they got into control of their former Confederate leadership, would reduce the freed slaves back to a state of peonage or serfdom. Okay, and so there was a desire to protect the freed slaves
in other words,
and ensure that they could be citizens.
So in other words, all right, you're free, but you got no power. We're gonna take away your authority. You won't be able to vote. You're not actually citizens. You're free. Go have a life, but you're not citizens.
Right, and part of what the 14th Amendment was designed to do was to prevent that from happening, to overrule the notorious decision of Dred Scott versus Sanford by the Supreme Court, which held that an African American could never be a citizen. That's overruled by that particular clause. But there also were a lot of other motivations, and some of them were more purely political.
Like what?
Well, for example, there are provisions in the 14th Amendment that are designed to perpetuate the dominance in Congress and in the states of Republican majorities.
Oh, that's good stuff. That's fine.
Yeah, this is right after the Civil War. You have very heavy Republican majorities in Congress, and they wanted to make sure that that situation remained.
All right, but getting to this clause, born or naturalized. Naturalized means what exactly? I mean, there are people who come here, they become citizens, they're naturalized.
That's right.
We call those legal immigrants, right?
Well, illegal immigrants who become citizens.
Who become citizens.
You could be an immigrant and never become a citizen.
Have your green card and right, okay.
Right.
So bring this to today. We have this question, and it seems as though most people are going on the assumption that if a child is born here, that child is automatically a citizen. That, you know, as long as you get across that border, get across that river, that's an American.
Well,
and is this a state issue? Is it a federal issue? If that kid has a birth certificate, isn't he treated as an American?
It's mostly a federal issue, John. And again, at this point, it's up in the air whether or not the child of an illegal alien resident in this country who was born in this country actually becomes a citizen. It all centers on the language of subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, there are a lot of, let me give you a warning, a consumer warning. There are a lot of people out there who are making statements that the intent of the framers of this language is very clear. They'll say, for example, they're clearly citizens or they're clearly not citizens. Take my word for it, it's not clear. It's highly ambiguous. The U.S. Supreme Court struggled with this issue late in the 19th century when the question came up of whether the child of a legal alien who was born in this country is a citizen, and they decided the answer is yes. And more importantly for our case, they decided that the traditional English concepts are what called allegiance applied in this instance, and that does create a very heavy bias in favor of citizenship for anybody born here.
All right, let me see if I've got this. So in the 19th century, there was a case for legal immigrants,
Yes.
but not citizens.
Correct.
All right, so legal immigrants, today we'd call them somebody with a green card.
Right.
Or you have a work visa. You're here legally, but you're not a citizen. You don't get a vote, you're not a citizen. And the Supreme Court says if they have a baby, if that woman has a baby, that baby is an American citizen.
That's correct.
So that's settled, right?
That is settled, although some of the people arguing against birthright citizenship today would upend that decision too.
All right. And you're telling me that since the late 1800s, the Supreme Court hasn't made it clear on this? This seems like a pretty important clarification.
You know, John, one of the things that constantly astonishes me about constitutional law is how much isn't decided yet and how much doubt there still is. There is a case out of 1982 in which the court put in a footnote in which it seemed to say that illegal aliens and legal aliens are to be treated the same, but that footnote doesn't have much persuasive power.
Why not? I mean, if it's a footnote, at least it's something.
Well, because it wasn't an issue in the case. It was a statement by a statement of opinion by a judge, not based upon any particular argument. It's what we lawyers call dicta. It's a throwaway comment. So I don't think it has much value other than maybe biasing the process a little bit one way or another.
Can I say this?
Yeah.
That in the late 1800s, the Supreme Court says legal aliens but not citizens have a baby, that baby's a citizen. So the question is, are illegal aliens having a baby here if they're a citizen? So is it just that one piece of paper that makes the difference? If mom was here because she got a work visa to be here, I'm an American. Mom didn't, so I'm not. Does it get down to just that?
It could get down to that. I mean, the court could say it doesn't matter. The court could say that if you're here illegally, living here or visiting here, and you have a child, then that child is a citizen. The court might do that, and the paper makes no difference. On the other hand, the court may say that paper makes a huge difference. If you're legally here, then your kid is a citizen. If you're not legally here, then your kid is not. And frankly, a decision either way based on all the material I've seen is possible.
How does federal law treat it now? There must be, the feds must make an assumption one way or the other.
Well, I think some of the working assumptions of some of the federal agencies is that there's a real risk that a child born of somebody illegally here will be treated as a citizen. And so I know that there are efforts, for example, during rescue missions to deal with pregnant women who might be brought onto an American ship because of the possibility that if they give birth on the ship that the kid could be an American by reason of being on an American ship. So there's
because it's under American jurisdiction.
Yeah, under American jurisdiction. And there's some basis for that belief because, again, in 1898, you've got the Supreme Court saying, you know, we're importing the English version of allegiance into our Constitution.
What is allegiance? What does that mean?
Well, allegiance is essentially the duty that you owe to the sovereign of whatever country you're in. If you are an American citizen, you owe what's called natural allegiance. But if you go and visit Britain, then you owe local allegiance to obey their laws and so forth. And traditionally, the rule has been if you have local allegiance, you happen to be in a foreign country, that's enough to make your kid a natural-born citizen if you happen to give birth there. Something which, of course, you and I will actually never do.
Science is getting crazy. Who knows? Who knows?
But there are people who say it's absolutely wrong to use that British concept of allegiance. But as of right now, it's part of the Supreme Court's law.
Do the states have any say in this? I mean, is it something that Colorado legislature and governor could say, in Colorado, we declare that our interpretation is this? Or is this completely a federal issue?
Not a lot of say. The main role that the states might have is if this case is decided one way or another, and the states want to change the result, or if the states want to end the doubts, they could initiate a process under the Constitution to amend the Constitution to clarify the issue. They have that power to call what's called a convention for proposing amendments to do that. But short of that, they really don't have a lot of say over the measure.
You're no good to me here, man. You're not giving me anything. Give me an answer. Is he a citizen? Is he not a citizen?
I think the courts will ultimately decide that the children of people who are illegally here are, in fact, citizens.
Why makes you think that?
It's not exactly necessarily the result I would like, because the record surrounding the adoption of the 14th Amendment is very ambiguous on the processes. Don't let anybody else tell you differently. And because the U.S. Supreme Court has already committed itself to this concept of allegiance, which biases the case very heavily in favor of citizenship for anyone born here.
So this concept that happened right after the Civil War, this legal resident who was here as an immigrant, that is going to have an impact now in 2015
That's
should
right.
this thing go through.
It's a good
Wow.
example of how we're still arguing about the meaning of the 14th Amendment 150 years after it was ratified.
The original Constitution by Rob Natelson. Check it out at Amazon.com. Listen for me on KHOW Radio. Tell a friend about the Independence Institute. We'll see you next week.